All right, so seeing the presence of a quorum, I am calling the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee to order at 6:34 on April 12th. We'll go around and take a roll call vote. I'll start with Allison.
Allison present.
Sarah Bess. I'll take that as a lip read here. All right, Roger. Jennifer.
Jennifer here.
Margaret.
Margaret present.
Irv.
Irv present.
And Ben present also. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Do we need Maylene here for minutes?
Maylene is unable to come tonight, hence some of the scrambling last minute on my part, but she will take minutes from the stream, and I think for the part there's not a stream for, I'll take minutes if the committee agrees, but we can sort that out in a couple minutes.
Works for me. All right, so the school committee will now consider entering executive session in accordance with the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to conduct collective bargaining sessions and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation of APEA, and AFSCME if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, and to approve minutes in accordance with the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 22, with intention of returning to public session, open session. All right. So we will go roll call vote. Irv.
I'm here and I cannot be heard.
Oh, wait, we're not there yet.
We're not there yet?
Nope.
I'm Irv Rhodes. Welcome.
just trying to get there first. Just trying to get.
I thought I already did that.
I'll second the motion. I don't know if anybody did.
Oh, there you go. Solid. Whoops. Skipping steps here. Now, Irv.
Second the motion? Someone's already second, right?
Yep. Just looking.
And?
Looking for a yay or a nay.
Yay.
Perfect. Margaret.
I'm going to catch up pretty soon, guys. It's been a hard day.
Jennifer.
Jennifer, yes.
Sarah Bess.
Sarah Bess, aye.
Allison.
Allison, aye.
And me, Ben, also aye. We're going to stop streaming / recording or...
Amherst Media.
All right. All right, so we're back and ready to roll. It says approval of minutes, but I do not see minutes. So we will skip on ahead to public comments. I didn't receive any written public comment. Was there any voicemail that I missed? I'll take that as a no. And I don't see any members of the public in here. I'm seeing that right? All right. So we'll move on to the superintendent's update then.
Can I make just a process suggestion before I jump in, Ben?
Sure.
Because we were in executive session, people weren't able to join the meeting from the public. So I just wonder if maybe we flip the order. My update it's not the shortest update I've ever given. I'll put it that way, the preview. And if people join at that point, then we might be able to entertain public comment if that's agreeable with you, Ben, and the committee.
Yeah, I think we could bump it down till after your update, or actually after school committee announcements. That'll probably give folks the most time to come on
That's
board.
perfect. Not that there definitely will be, but just, people would have to be pretty quick to know that to try to get logged back in.
Yeah.
All right. So my update. So a couple nice things to start. Thanks to Marita Banda, who's a staff member at the high school. She accompanied our students in some of our specialized programs. There was a regional Best Buddies prom. Best Buddies is a program that supports students with more significant disabilities. It grouped, there was 150 students in a very, very large space, but a wonderful time was had by all. I was able to see the pictures of the students, and thanks to Marita for her work, for a wonderful time. I heard from a parent who just said it was the highlight of their child's year so far. So really nice to think about how we work with community agencies and partner agencies to provide different levels of resources for students and meet them where they are. Bittersweet about Hair. So High School Musical production, wonderful show for 2 nights. And unfortunately, we did have to postpone / cancel being worked out the 3rd night because we did have a number of positive cases that stem from the crew and cast of that show. So kudos to John Bechtold and Todd Fruth and the cast members, and we wish everyone who did test positive, well. And we apologize to the fan because we knew that Saturday night was going to be the largest night as well of attendees. I also want to thank the attendees. Talking to Mr. Bechtold, there was really no issues with safety and the health and safety requirements we put in. We had a number of questions in the front end. And we know from some other communities that they've tried to put in health and safety updates, but compliance hasn't been ideal, and we did not have issues with compliance. I really want to thank our larger community for recognizing that, and this is why, right? The health and safety measures matter. So that's where we are with that. I shared with the school committee or via Debbie Westmoreland this afternoon that I did do some outreach to our state rep, Mindy Dom, who's been talking to me for a while about this, as well as our state senator, Joe Comerford, about the efforts both at the federal, but particularly at the state level, to extend the free meals program that the federal government has supported. It keeps on being off and on, different bills in the federal government. There are 3 or 4 states that have supported at the state level to continue that program for the next year. And I provided some data, which to me was quite compelling about the impact it has on our students. So, made sure the school committee was CC'd. If there's any questions any committee member or community member has, I put it out on social media as well. It's not a secret what we did, but I really want to appreciate, I think one of the things I put out on social media is the fact that Mindy checks in with me frequently and says, what's going on in the schools? What are some things at the state that we can advocate for? What's going on the ground? That's not necessarily typical. Usually the outreach goes the other way. People in my role reach out, and just really want to thank her for her continued interest and advocacy for our district. We'll be coming back a little bit later. Thank you, but to talk about tardies. But I want to thank Allison and Jennifer. I forwarded your names to the Northampton group. We're going to try to get together sometime in the next 2 weeks, I understand, and try to develop a tool and gather feedback. But one of the things that we did that's not about feedback, but is about data, is I asked our IS department to come up with the number of tardies at the regional level at the same point 3 years ago as it was now. So, one of the thoughts is that the later start time, we have fewer tardies, and in fact, that is true. So just candidly, there's about 2,800 less tardies at this point of the year this year than there was 3 years ago at the same point of the year, 3/4 through the year. So that's a lot fewer tardies. That's a lot more hours in class. That's not the whole picture, but it was a really relatively easy to gather data point because we did have significant issues with tardies when the bell went off at 7:45. And it's not there are no tardies. I don't want to pretend that the problem is solved. There's still more than we'd like, but that's a huge reduction. It's about a third. The reduction is about a third of the overall number of tardies at the regional level. So more soon on that topic. We'll get more feedback, but I thought that was an interesting data point that was worth sharing. This week at the high school is consent week. So Danielle Seltzer is the staff representative of a group of students who have put on this effort. And every day during the plus block, there's different activities. Today was really focused on consent and advisory and discussion. Tomorrow has tapestry, condom, and sex ed lunch table and consent circle. Wednesday is a pathlight discussion, which is consent and disability, which is a kind of a slightly newer entry into our programming for that, but no less valuable, I think incredibly valuable. And then Thursday is optional, but the Amherst Police Department will offer a self-defense training for students who are interested in that. So really want to thank the students. This is completely student run. If Danielle was here, she would say that. She's really helped organize and steer in directions, but this is a really important week for all of our high school students and really differentiated based on interest and different topics. So I want to thank them for their work because it's important for us all. And I think that is my update for the evening, and I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Jennifer, go ahead.
So Mike, having a new middle schooler, I've learned that the term tardy also applies when you're late to a class, not just when you're late first thing in the morning. So does your tardies it's like first period tardies?
Exactly. I'm sorry. I should have been more clear. And I wasn't referencing your child, to be clear, but no, that's just a joke. Yeah. Might be my child sometimes. But no, we're looking at first period tardies. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned optional self-defense training from the Amherst Police Department. Do the police staff come to schools in uniform with weapons, or how is that? How are they presenting in schools?
So I don't know the answer exactly how they come in. It is an optional activity. And when I've seen them, it's been a while since I've seen this, they come in much more casual clothes because the training dictates that, because it's a very physical training with, just bluntly, it's very physical, right? And it's a lot more comfortable to do it. But I can find out and get back to you. I don't know the answer to that question.
That would be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I saw Irv's hand up, and then it went down, and then I saw Allison's. Did you still have a comment, Irv?
Yeah. Mike, could you give further information in terms of the articles and phone calls that I've gotten in relationship to the altercations at the high school?
Sure. Yeah. I don't have much to share since last week, except I think what quote that I think got in the paper today or yesterday, which is that since the kind of more clear tightening up at the school, more presence in the hallways, it's been a productive and relatively quiet week and a half. I think there's legal processes outside the schools that are continuing, and I think that was the focus of the article that I saw. That's not something that we are involved with. That's something that the court system and DA's office, those folks are involved with. For us, we're focused on the kids we have and making sure they're healthy and safe. And we've had a quiet week, and that's a good thing. So that's really, I don't have more to add than I shared last week other than that.
Allison?
Yeah, thanks for the varied update. And also I should just comment the Ruby was one of the cast members of Hair, and so it was a pretty spectacular production. We were able to go on Friday, and yeah, it was amazing. I'm wondering, I know that because there was discussion before the performance on Friday about the deficit that the theater program has because of canceled shows due to COVID, and that was before obviously Saturday was canceled. And my understanding is that the revenue from the ticket sales from every year's musical actually goes forward to fund the next year's musical. So that this year we were starting from a hole because of the cancellation 2 years ago. And the shrunken production a year ago. So I'm just wondering, are there options that we have to sort of help get that sort of back on its feet, so that they're not completely always starting from this deficit? Are there any ways, I don't know, maybe with ESSER or some other funding mechanisms that we're able to sort of support that so that they can start from a solid ground after another year of cancellations?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, it's quite literally not the figurative term, but it's a pay it forward system. So 1 year's gate receipts, so to speak, pays for the next year's production, and they've had a couple years without significant gate receipts. I think when we come back in May at our next meeting and talk about third quarter budget and see where we're sitting, I think that'd be the best way to talk about it, because there sometimes is flexibility at the end of a fiscal year to see if there are any savings, how we could potentially plug holes like the one you suggest, because it's certainly not the theater department's fault. It was absolutely the right call, in my opinion, to cancel the show on Saturday. And I think the evidence since Saturday has reinforced that that was the right decision. And there's a financial impact. Again, no one's fault, but there's a financial impact. So I think we may be able to have that conversation in the context of third quarter budget, because we'll have that and what flexibility we may have to perhaps supplement kind of the unfortunate loss of revenue that is we're concerned would affect the theater department. So I know I skipped ahead to future topics, but I don't know how to answer the question without doing that. Sorry, Ben.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, then. Moving right along. I actually do not have an update today. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, I just I've heard from a member of the public that they're having trouble joining the Google Meet. And I'm looking at the link, and Board Docs appears to be the same link that we joined, but let's see. This person says they're getting a message that says the Meet code you're using doesn't match a call you can join, which is weird.
What may have happened is when we were in executive session, there were 1 or 2 people who tried to join. They were not allowed to join at that point. So they may have to log back on and try to join again. That'd be my guess of how to do that, because I think once you're rejected, you just sort of have to reshuffle things. That's my understanding anyway.
So then before we go to public comments, I have no chairs update, so we'll go to school committee announcements. Hopefully we have anything. Allison.
Yeah, the negotiating subcommittee has met last week with the APEA on, I think it was Wednesday evening, and we'll have another meeting on, our next meeting with the APEA is on Monday, the 25th, right after the April vacation.
Thank you. And Margaret?
I just sent out an email today to the members of the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee, asking for dates to be able to meet next week, so that we can start that process. So that went to Jennifer, Irv, and Stephen. So
Right. Thank you. Do we have any other school committee announcements? Anybody? Stephen? Jennifer, there we go.
Sorry.
Good.
I don't have an announcement, but can we check in with the Amherst media to make sure that their live stream is okay? Because it might not be.
I think what they said earlier, and I'll text, is that they were having a little troubles on channel 15, but they're perfect and live on YouTube. But that was about almost an hour ago. So let me check back with them.
Any announcements? Trying to stall a little bit to give folks a chance to come in and make comments here. So, Sarah Bess, good.
I just got updated that both the girls varsity and junior varsity lacrosse teams won their games this afternoon.
Awesome.
Yep.
And I guess I'll add that I had the honor and privilege of spending some money at the Best Buddies bake sale today at the high school. So that was pretty awesome. And I also got to see some kids that I knew in elementary school that are either I've shrunk or they grew or there was a combination thereof, but there's a gap. I saw that and I was happy to see that. Should I keep stalling or should I just push public comments further down? We'll take care of some other things first. I'll put it. Oh, I guess we could put it down to either before or after the public comment process and procedures discussion. Seems like a pretty cool place to put it. So we'll move right along to the ESSER funds spending update.
Sure, and I'll turn it over to Doug if you want to share your screen in a second, Doug. But this will be a brief topic, I believe. There's not much new news, so to speak. You know, we presented a longer document a couple months ago, and we've stayed on that plan. There's been a couple adjustments that Doug will speak to, but mostly there's not a lot new in this. But Doug will share more details.
I'll make that a little larger since it's not presenting very large. So hopefully that's visible to everyone. And everyone can hear me okay? Just give me a nod. Yeah? Okay. So again, as the superintendent said, there's not a lot of change here. The two things that are highlighted in yellow are really the changes. One is the addition of some support for our budget for fiscal 23. So we wanted to note that as additional spending that will come up in the coming year. And speaking of performing arts, we had, early in the process sort of solicit ideas from folks. There was one regarding, some lighting at the high school in and around the stage and auditorium. Some of it's about the house lights, some of it's about actually performance lights. And we initially sort of proposed this to the folks at the state relative to ESSER. They subsequently, their initial reaction was no, you can't use ESSER funds for this. We kind of came back and sort of made the case around some of the programming, both some of the theater work we do, but also some of the classes that we offer in performing arts around stagecraft and some of that, and how this is integral to that curriculum. And so that sort of made a much more positive impact on them and was deemed to be eligible. So we've added that in as an eligible spending and opportunity to sort of improve and update some features and facilities in our high school auditorium. As far as the other three areas that you're seeing there, that's sort of just an update on where we're spending to date relative to the things we've indicated in our past reports to you all. I will say very slightly here, one thing that's under contracted services, you'll say CNAs for isolation rooms. That spending has been a little less than what we originally projected because we were able to get some reimbursement from FEMA to help us out with that. And so as we incur those expenses, some of them are still eligible. And so we submit to FEMA for reimbursement, which helps mitigate that, which then saves ESSER funding for other purposes that we can use in subsequent years. So that's a positive bit of news that's a little hard to not identify to see there because it's a sort of cost avoidance, as it were. But I think otherwise the spending we're doing is in line with what we've indicated in the past. We're going to spend it on things we're targeting and areas in which we're trying to support our students and our programs as we manage our way through the pandemic and try to emerge from it in a way that's constructive and positive for the kids and the adults that are in our system.
Great. There we go. Irv?
Thank you, Doug, for that information. And I also just want to point out and to say that, Doug, you have become the consummate person for presenting information in a tolerable manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Have any other questions or comments or compliments? All right. So then we can move on to warrant process and procedures.
And so just bringing us back, this came up at towards the end of the last meeting, just about questions about the changes in the Mass Modernization Act, which is now probably 4 years old, 3-4 years old, something like that, and the way warrant processes offer. And I talked to Doug about this, and a couple of options for you all if you want to change or want to stay together, but we just want to make sure everyone had the same information. So I'll ask Doug to share just what the processes can be under that act as it relates to approving warrants.
So any spending that we do requires you as the sort of purveyors of the budget to approve those. So a warrant is just a document declaring what we're spending our money on before we release our checks and pay people. So it includes all spending on payroll and any related payroll expenses, as well as purchasing of goods and services that the district does, from foodstuffs for our food service program to anything else we have. So any dollar that we spend requires ultimately the school committee's authorization to actually send the checks out and about. And so that's what this is about, is the warrants are where we itemize what we're sending in a particular block of spending. Traditionally, before the Modernization Act, it required a majority of the school committee to come into the office, review the warrant to whatever extent you wanted to, and then sign. With the Municipal Modernization Act, it allowed for a single member of the school committee to sign, but then they were required at the next meeting to give a report on that spending. And so that's the mode we've used the last several years with a single individual signing the document and then reporting at the next available meeting. And we tried to put some forms together to make it sort of, boilerplate. And you've sat through many of those readings of those spending forms and where the money got spent in a very general sense. That being said, one of the things with the pandemic is we've gone to electronic signature, which has been really a benefit in a lot of ways. It's also it has its wrinkles and confusion and difficulties as we work with it, but nonetheless it's a nice option. It doesn't require you to physically come to the office to sign. We try to put the warrant in its entirety in a share file for you to review if you choose to look at that and review it. And then the warrant itself is just the page that needs a signature is what we send out for electronic signature. However, we could change. Another option if the board wanted to have a broader review of more members, we could revert back to the sort of classic style of warrant review and signature, and we'd probably use an electronic signature for that as well, so you wouldn't physically have to come to the building and when the office is open and come in and review and sign. So you really have the option to remain with what you've been doing, which is a single person signing and then reporting, or you can go back to a more traditional where at least a majority would need to sign, and then the reporting wouldn't have to happen at the meeting if you went to that mode. And we'd use electronic signature in both circumstances just because it's more convenient for everyone. We generally don't want to put the reports or the warrant reports into sort of public. It is public information, but it often contains personally identifiable information, and so we try to not generally put it into the public realm if we don't have to, just because we'd have to scrub that personal information out of it. When we, oftentimes when we're doing particular services with particular companies, that particular children's names are mentioned or particular staff people's names are mentioned, and so we try to leave that out when we put documents in the public realm. So we want to be conscientious and careful with that. So you really have kind of either option available to you to do a single signature and report at meetings, or to have multiple people sign and release. The other thing I'll say is generally with payroll related warrants, we will release those checks. We're in a bit of a conundrum between getting a warrant signed and meeting the requirements of wage and labor law. So we defer to the paychecks going out as soon as they're ready, and under the understanding that a signature from school committee will occur. For our accounts payable, where we're paying for goods and services, that sort of thing, we generally wait and hold those checks and those payments until we actually get the signature on the warrant that's necessary.
All right, Allison?
Yeah, I was wondering, I think the question, as I remember it, was, does the school committee, is the school committee able or need to see the warrants? Which made me wonder if there's a third option, if folks want to be able to see them, is keep delegate that authority to one person, one member, but make that shared folder accessible to the school committee, so that any member may go and look at those if they so choose, versus needing to sort of hold it up and sort of send it, the time delay to send it through 5 subsequent people to review and sign. Maybe you'd still have to make the documents available to all committee members in case they are the one, the first among the first 5 to be able to sign it. But I just know that sometimes there can be a delay versus bringing it to a meeting, which is the way we used to do it, and
Right.
having everybody sign all at once.
Right, and we can certainly, we've been kind of cautious with regard to making the warrant share file more broadly available to the school committee, but it's certainly, certainly something we could do is give that link to everyone. I think the key thing is that you would not want to share that link with others besides the school committee, just because, again, in order to make it fully public would require us to do a bit of scrubbing of that. To make sure that it's clearly not got identifiable information, but it is a possibility, and we're open to that suggestion.
Irv?
Given that I have, by some mysterious process, become the person signing these warrants, one of the things that I've been impressed with is that they appear at irregular times. Almost sometimes simultaneously, all at once, and I have now mastered the process of being able to sign them, and then being able to simultaneously retain that signature, so that I could then report it to the school committee. Alas, that has been lost. But anyway, I am working on recovering it. I would suggest that this process, while maybe really efficient, it may be not ideal in terms of where we are with it. I, for one, would like to have a backup person who could also sign in my absence, and that does not now exist.
So I think when we were reorganizing the committee, I thought we had selected you as the signator for the
Oh, yes,
region, and
yeah,
I
mysteriously.
thought we picked somebody as the second, but we maybe didn't that evening, but we should. I agree with you. There should be a second in that regard. As far as the sort of timing of the warrants, the payroll warrants tend to be much more regular because of the nature of payroll happening every other week. Accounts payable's much more uneven in its appearance, and that's partly due to the when and how purchasing occurs, and when materials get delivered, and when staff pass along to our accounts payable folks that things have been received and are truly in hand, and here's the invoice, those kind of things. So those all sort of make some unevenness in the accounts payable side, which is decidedly different from payroll, which is basically every 2 weeks those come along. But there is a bit of variability in those, and so that is probably likely to continue, just the nature of our purchasing, when it happens and how it happens and that sort of thing. But yes, if someone would want to serve, if we haven't designated someone specifically to be the backup for IRF, then certainly we should identify someone and can get them sort of up and running in case they would need to fill in his absence. And one other thing I'll say, Irv, just as a general point, is that if at any time you sort of, like you're saying, sort of those reports and not being able to find them or whatever, just reach out to myself and we'll find a copy and get it to you. If sort of separate from the sort of electronic signature method,
Right.
we've got a way to get you a copy to read if necessary.
I really appreciate that.
It doesn't always, the software is nice, but it's not perfect, and it's not always straightforward and exactly how it you think it should work. It'll play a little bit differently at different times. So no doubt we can get you stuff.
All right, Jennifer.
So my concern is making sure that we're in compliance with state law. So am I right? I think you said, Doug, that our two options are one person signs and then we read them out loud at a school committee meeting, or like a quorum signs or a majority signs, and then we don't have to read them out loud at school committee meetings?
That's correct.
There's no requirement that they be read aloud. There's just that's just what we do if only one person signs.
Correct. So yes, if a quorum of the committee signs, that presumes, when you're signing, you're also essentially attesting the fact that you've reviewed it and you're okay with the spending that's occurred within that warrant. So it's the signature is an attestation that you're okay with the spending. And so once a majority of the board has said that, then like any motion within the operation of the school committee, it would pass. And so that is sufficient. So there's no need to report to the full committee at that point. On the other hand, when an individual is signing a warrant, then the state law requirement is that a report be made to the rest of the members about that spending that has occurred.
Okay, thank you.
Margaret?
I would volunteer to be a backup for Irv.
I like that idea. Any objections?
Outstanding. Love it.
Sweet.
All right, I'll make sure that our folks in my office know that, so that if we need to reach out, we will. No news is good news.
Yeah. All right, Doug, you're in.
All right. Any more questions, comments, concerns regarding warrant process and procedure? Sweet. So we'll move on to potential future uses of the Amherst Regional Middle School fields.
Yep. So I will, this is more an informational piece. Last week, the weeks are getting mixed up, at the last school building committee meeting that Ben and I were at, which is a committee that's focused on building an elementary school in Amherst. There was some conversation. Right now, they're looking at two different sites. One of the sites is the current Wildwood site. And some of the conversation went to the field, and I'll bring it up in a second to show you a better, visual example, that's currently owned by the region. It's adjacent to the Amherst, especially where a potential building would be on the Wildwood site. We don't know if it actually will be there. And there was some question about could that site be utilized for play space during the school day? Potentially where the hill is shaped, could it be reshaped to provide a little more access and accessibility? So if it was to be used, it would provide an ADA compliant ramp down to that field, which currently doesn't exist coming from the Wildwood side. So let me, instead of just chatting, let me bring up, I did 2 images on board docs, and I'm trying to choose which one is the easiest one to show. I think the more visual one would be from the Google Maps version. So let me pull that up. Sorry, I'm doing a little more multitasking than usual at the meeting because some folks aren't here. So the field I'm talking about is on this picture to the left of the tennis courts. It is used primarily after school as a field for lacrosse and some other sports. I did talk to the middle school PE teacher, and he indicated that is not used during the school day. I brought up, well, what about 6th grade coming up? And he said the fields that are kind of behind the softball diamond are large enough and much closer to the building. And from an access supervision standpoint from the middle school, they're much preferable. And so this question has not yet come to the Amherst School Committee. So I'm not looking from my perspective, I'm not looking for a specific decision, certainly by any stretch tonight. But I started feeling uncomfortable at the school building committee that we're talking about a region-owned field and not having a conversation with the regional school committee. At least I let them know that this is something that was being talked about in a public meeting. The context, again, just to be really clear, that the line for property is at the bottom of the hill right here. I don't know how much you can see that, but there's a hill from Wildwood down to where the tennis courts and those fields are. And the conversation was focused on, could that be a play space? Could it also house geothermal wells that would, in a green way, heat the building? My response is they would have to bring it to 2 different committees, the regional schools and the Amherst schools. It's a little awkward to bring it to the regional schools first because the Amherst Elementary School Committee has not even had this discussion, but just the way the schedule worked, I didn't want to wait and have the region waiting essentially a month from that public conversation at a building committee to at least know it's being discussed. Where it'll go, I don't know. What site the building will be on, whether the project will actually happen, whether it's ad run or new. There's a lot of variables right now that we don't know the answer to, but I didn't want you to have to read it in a paper or read it somewhere else to know that there was at least some discussion of engaging the regional school committee about the use of the field and any shared potential use. The one thing I did indicate to the architects is I think not the regional school committee, I didn't speak for you all, would be much more open to the conversation about use during the day when fields aren't used. I was not open, my personal opinion, to actually building on those fields because the fields are a community resource. They are used heavily on weekends and after school for the region. And to me, with my regional superintendent hat on, I wouldn't be comfortable giving that up. Because I think we talk about fields a lot in the last couple of months here at the region, and for good reason. We want our students to be active after school, and we want to have community resources go to that. So, Ben, I'm trying to just go to you as someone else who was at the same meeting I keep referencing. Did I capture the kind of flavor of that dialogue?
Yeah, that's very accurate. Yeah.
Okay. And I thought, just if any of the committee members had comments or questions, that I could bring back, or Ben in his role as chair of the region could bring back. Again, this isn't looking for a decision. It's not looking for, this is a good idea, bad idea. Certainly you can share that. It was more just, I didn't want to have the region not in a conversation for a month about something that involves the region.
Perfect. Sarah Bess, go ahead.
Would it be like I know this is very early questioning. So would it be like a rental agreement to use this space like that? Or would the space be sold to Amherst? How has that come up at all?
It has, and I'll give you my opinion. So I'll be forward to share that I think some level of rental agreement seems a lot easier to me than thinking about sale. It gets a little complicated because Amherst is 80% of the region, and when we think about sale of land, it actually brings up tons of legal issues as well. I'm not the expert on them, but it gets complicated. And my personal opinion with my region hat on is the region does use these fields. It just doesn't happen to use them during the school day, but it uses them for the athletics program. And one of the things that we're thinking with sixth grade moving to the region is, I was in a meeting today with our athletic director and our town recreation department director about expanding opportunities for middle schoolers to participate in physical activities after school. So to me, I think it's a resource that I wouldn't advocate for the region to literally give up. I think the question is more about during the school day where it's not used. Is there some potential lease or some level of agreement that could be developed about potential use, and the benefit of access? This has come up several times in my time in the district, that for folks who want to watch a lacrosse game there, there's not a particularly great way, because a lot of the viewing area is sort of at the bottom of that hill, and for folks who do have mobility challenges, getting there is a problem. So to me, I think if we were going to consider this, one of the benefits to the region would be greater access for viewing, and perhaps some better treatment of the fields. So that's, I see what some of the benefits might be if we go down this road, which thankfully is not my decision to make.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's Stephen. I saw a hand go up and then hand go down. Is that?
Yeah, Mike just addressed my ADA access issue, because all of our fields are struggling with that, and it would be super nice to get a ramp to get down there, to park at the Wildwood and get down to the field.
Yeah, Steve's exactly right. I mean, the thing that I've heard from folks who have talked to me about it is to park at the middle school and sort of go on that path around it's not easy. It's not the ramp we have going up is certainly not an ADA ramp, right? The one going down, depending which way you're coming from, going around the tennis courts with the hill. So it doesn't leave a lot of great options around access and accessibility, as Steve mentioned. So it is an ongoing need in the community. And, I think from my region hat, that would be a significant benefit if we went down this road. Certainly the region could do it on its own, but if it gets to do it for free, then perhaps that's a good thing.
Jennifer, go ahead.
So I don't know a lot about how these things work, but we're talking about putting in a geothermal well field in that field for a potential Wildwood building project, right?
That's one of the two. It also could be, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear about this. I think there's two potential sort of uses that might be discussed. One is a geothermal well. Another potential use is not doing anything with the geothermal well, but using it for like recess and play space during the day, or it could be both. So I think those are all on the table.
Okay. Just my only thought about putting a geothermal well field. Again, I don't know how much these things work, but like at some point in the future, when and if the middle school is going to need to be renovated or redone or upgraded or whatever, would that preclude the region from using that field for the same purposes for a potential future middle school building? You know what I mean?
That is a fabulous question that Ben and I can bring back to that other group, because Ben, you can weigh in if you know the answer, but certainly beyond my knowledge base. Thank you for that. It's a really important point. And was there potential to expand it and have the middle school benefit? I mean, you've got me thinking in a different way, that comment did. So thank you, Jennifer, because then is there a potential benefit beyond just a new school? Does it have capacity actually because of the proximity to support things at the middle school too, either now or in the future? So what's the potential of that? Thank you. This is exactly why we bring these things up in public meetings, to get great feedback like the way we've heard from a couple people. So thank you.
You have any other questions or thoughts? All right. Thank you, Mike. And we will move on to the report on principal longevity, the Rogers report from back in January. I'm going to go ahead and set that up.
Yeah. So when this was first presented and Rick came and presented it, we said we'd want to come back to this to have a conversation about, whether there were next steps, on my side or on the school committee side. We had our Pelham colleagues, I thought, had a very deep and interesting conversation. I know they followed up on this matter. And so, in terms of the conversation, it's really opportunity because there was so much presenting and questions at the time of the report. We didn't really get to focus much on next steps for us. And so really it's just an opportunity if people had reflections, if they had feedback for me or other things they wanted to mention, to make a space that folks could be commenting or looking forward, to improve our organization based on the report that was presented. So that's I think all the queuing I would do, and certainly happy to answer any questions about how we're approaching at a district level, but it's more just an open space to have dialogue. I know it got a little, in time perspective, a little separated from the initial report, which, could be good, but it could be bad. I won't put a value on it.
Allison, go ahead.
Yep. Well, you invited the question, so I'm going to tee it up, which is several of I think it was the first two recommendations were related to onboarding and mentorship. And I'm just curious as to what conversations you've been having or will be having and working on sort of considering those particular two recommendations.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for that. So we've done a lot of internal work. The two-way entry planning is something that's more for someone coming in new, but in terms of the current mentor supports, and I'm going to speak in generalities. I know this is a regional meeting, but we operate educationally as one district, even though I know technically it's three. We're having conversations with folks who are in their first year about what mentor supports they would want for their second year. Is the current mentor working for them? Would they want to continue? Would they want a different model? So those conversations, as recently as this morning, working with folks who have not been in their current role for that long. And I think, one of the other things that we're viewing is, I think, and I thought it was a great suggestion, is having an external mentor as well as an internal, docent was sort of a nice term that we've stolen organizationally around that. So we've also, with Omicron having receded, I know we're sort of not in the same good place we were maybe a couple of weeks ago, but we're still not where we were in December and January. We're having a lot more administrative meetings and we're focusing on this topic. So for instance, the last two have focused on priorities for our professional work and our professional culture over the next year, and started it with an open-ended, kind of brainstorming session, and then the prioritization session in small groups and large group. So really honing in on what supports and that our principals, assistant principals, and directors are saying they need, both for themselves, but also for their schools. And then we're going to build a curriculum or a program of studies to support them, and a more regular set of meetings, as was suggested in the report. We find, and this is not a knock on school committee, but for administrative meetings, since we've been back in person, our ability to engage in dialogue, especially small group dialogue and then large group dialogue, is really enhanced, and we're having much more deep conversations than we were when we were in virtual. And it's not comparable. Our large group leadership meeting is 25 people. It's a bigger group. It's really hard for everyone to participate in a virtual meeting when there's 25 people, when the point is to actively participate, and that's the way we run our meetings. So those have yielded a lot of good results. Our last meeting was last Thursday, and we're narrowing our focus collectively. But I think the other thing that's happened as we've done that is we're getting back to more routine collaboration between administrators. And that was alluded to multiple times in the report, that it's good to have mentors and docents, but we want to build that collaborative culture that I think we had. And COVID has made it challenging. Frankly, we're talking about COVID seemingly all the time, and didn't give space to talk about other challenges. And not that COVID's gone by any stretch, but we've got our mitigations and our systems. And again, we can toggle back and forth based on the health director. So we're getting much more deep into conversations about leadership and developing that work, and developing plans for our summer admin week, and extending that a little bit in terms of our programming, as well as our routine collaborative meetings as administrative teams. So I think one of the things that Doreen in particular has been working on is how to differentiate that for folks who are new to our district versus folks who have been in their roles for 5, 10, 15 years. And so we're actively working on that. We are looking ahead because we will have a number of principal searches next year because we have a number of people in interim roles, and we've committed to the community that we'll have public postings, and how we might adjust some of that process to make sure there's full engagement of the larger community, and we define what we're looking for on the front end of that process before the process really kicks off with the more traditional parts of a job search. And lastly, the problems of practice. We've gotten back, and we're starting to get back into being more explicit of folks bringing problems, and our agendas are shared beforehand in their Google Docs, so anyone on the team can bring up any topic. And just very bluntly, some of the challenges we've seen, at a couple of our schools we've engaged a full leadership team. Because I think when we do after action reviews and assess how things are going, it's not just the site that is sharing the challenge that benefits. We all challenge from learning in that process. So sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but it's been a very, very helpful kind of roadmap for us at the central leadership level to organize our time, and our time is very precious, right? We take, it's a privilege that we're able to be together, and everyone has a lot of competing interests, but when we are focused together, that's really how the culture piece can happen. We struggle to build culture on Zoom. I know what some people can do it. Family members who work exclusively, virtually, God bless them. For our work, it really helps when we're together on a weekly basis, and that's what we've put in place.
Jennifer?
So, Mike, just to be clear, you're just asking us for input or feedback on the report at this point?
Yeah, so I think it doesn't have to be, and it could be for me and the leadership level at the staff level. It could be for the community and school committee level. It just was a space. We felt like the conversation was good last time, but it was more focused on Rick and his report and less on implications for all of us more directly.
Well, one of the most striking things to me about the report, and I said this when Rick presented it, was the finding that I'm looking at it now, the longest serving administrators are all white men, and that most of the principals who left have been women. And yet there wasn't anything in his recommendations about supporting women in leadership roles. And I think when I said that in the meeting, Rick said, "Oh yeah, I should have added something about that," or I don't know why I didn't add something about that. So I think that's something that's really striking that should be addressed head on, that we should really be thinking about how do we support women in leadership roles. So I think, I don't know, I think often you find in education that teachers are more likely to be women, but people in leadership roles are more likely to be men. So what can we do as a district to support women who are in those roles?
Yeah, Rick actually wrote to me afterwards about that exchange because he did a lot of thinking after it. So I appreciate you raising that topic again. One of the things that he recommended to me, and I don't think it's public record, right? He emailed me, was thinking about, affinity groups as being one strategy. And actually the district has started affinity groups, less explicitly for leaders, but there's a women of color affinity group that I know has gotten broad participation and been positively received by people. And I know some of our leaders and leaders of color in particular in that group have met. We did a lot for thinking through what affinity groups are out there, beyond our district, so that it broadens scope. So that was one of the recommendations, was around how do we provide affinity group and spaces where administrators or leaders who identify as women can receive that support. And so we've started putting that place in the district, and we are trying to look at how to do that beyond. I know in my professional organization, they do an awful lot, but we're seeing less formalized structures at the principal level for that in their professional organization. So we are trying to reach out to other communities about how to support that, because I do think our community is unique, and some of the challenges cited are true of female leaders beyond our particular district, or really beyond this field of education. So Rick really appreciated your feedback on that, and added some suggestions that are not in the report, but they're things that we're taking to heart.
Any other questions about the report or comments on? All right. I was going to say we're going to move on, but this is definitely something worth revisiting again. But so the next topic, Jennifer, good.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes, we can take a 5-minute break. So it is, I have 8:03 on my laptop, actually 8:04 now. So we'll meet back up at 8:09 promptly. Alrighty, waiting for one more. And here we are. All right, it is 8:09. We are ready to roll again. So I believe this is Allison's topic to queue up, right? Public comment process and procedures.
Sure, I can talk, get us started on this. This was, there's a link in the agenda to an article from I forget the name of the organization, National School Board Association, that was published back in January, talking about, it was referencing more sort of the summertime and discord that was happening at school board meetings around the country that thankfully we didn't experience quite as much in the current year. But what was intriguing to me was the comment about was the conversation about sort of equity in sort of having voices or broad spectrum of voices being heard, and how to make meetings, public meetings, feel more inclusive and sort of welcoming to public comment and participation from a broader group of people. And I think some of the things that we experience in our school committee meetings are not unique, in that sort of we tend to hear from a small subsection of our broad community and on a frequent basis, as opposed to different people at different times. I think one of the things that struck us during 2020 and early part of 2021 in COVID was that we were hearing from a much larger group and cross section of our community, whether in public comment or in email, and how can we continue that, and how can we keep that sort of broader. And I just found some of the ideas that they had suggested in there as like good thought starters for us to think about ideas that we might want to explore or consider, or maybe we feel like it's our policy is inclusive and equitable as it is, because we did incorporate a couple other mechanisms for people to participate in our meetings. But I just thought it would be interesting to have the conversation as a committee and consider whether there were things that we wanted to explore changing or issues that we saw.
Thank you.
I guess the other thing that I thought, one of their suggestions that really stood out to me, and I know we specifically, when we updated our public comment policy a couple of years ago, we were clear that public comment was not a time for conversation or discussion or debate between the public and the school committee. It was not a Q&A, if you will. Particularly if it wasn't an agenda topic, so that it becomes an OML issue, an open meeting law issue, if we start having a deliberation on a topic that wasn't on the agenda. That said, one of the things that I thought was interesting was figuring the comment that that seeing the school committee being responsive to public comment sort of in the meeting could be a way, it can make the meetings much more welcoming and inclusive to folks that that sort of perceive it as just a one-way talk at the camera kind of situation. And so just intrigued to sort of poke at that one and see if there's something that the committee wanted to consider in our public comment.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, go ahead.
So I agree, Allison. I like the idea of allowing a brief period to respond to comments, not deliberate, as you said, but to allow for an optional period for any member to respond to comments, because sometimes there are misstatements or misunderstandings or something like that in the comments. So I think if we could come up with some way to do that, I would be in favor of that. In terms of supporting equity and getting in the supporting equity and having a more sort of hearing from more families in public comment, I have a few thoughts and ideas. One is, I think it's not very intuitive that the instructions for public comment are in the agenda for each meeting. And I think that's the only place where you can actually find specific instructions for how to give public comment. So I would urge us to put that somewhere on the ARP's website, not even on Board Docs, because Board Docs is also confusing, but somewhere on the, like, I think the ARP's website maybe has a page for the school committee page. So maybe some generic instructions there of how to give public comment for any meeting could be placed there. I also think we should consider accepting written and voicemail comments in Spanish, and that the district should take on the responsibility of having those translated, and then heavily publicize that that's an option so that we can hear from Spanish-speaking families. And other things we should maybe think about accepting SMS or text comments, because I've talked to a few families who, like, the parents like literally don't have email, like they don't have jobs that require email, so they just don't have email, and they don't get Dr. Morris's emails, and they just don't. Email is not part of their everyday life, but texting is. So is there a way we can accept text comments? I think those are my initial thoughts on this topic. Thank you.
All right. Any other? Margaret.
So I'm wondering, can we come back to this in a future meeting? I mean, I haven't really read this information that you provided, and I would like to be able to read it and think about it, and at some point talk about it then.
I think we absolutely could. Any other input here on public comments? You wanted to say, Sasha. Mike, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Tonight, just from a process perspective, would this go to the policy subcommittee, or would it come back, as Margaret said, just to the full committee next time? I don't have a preference. I'm just trying to, I think there were some really good suggestions, and I appreciate the suggestions as well as the article that you found and we put on Board Docs, Allison. So I'm just trying to figure out what would be the next step to move forward to try to improve our public comment policy.
Margaret, and then Sarah Beth.
So thinking, at least for myself, if you wanted, I would be comfortable sending email to Allison or somebody on the policy subcommittee if I had thoughts about this. If we wanted to go that route, to have the policy subcommittee start on some change, potentially some changes.
Sarah Beth.
I was actually going to suggest that maybe we have one more conversation about it, so it gives people to have some more ideas that we can then go back to the policy subcommittee with, and do our research about, because I think the more ideas we can have, and then who knows, maybe even the public will have another opportunity if it's on the agenda again, that they can, if they have ideas about how they would like to public comment, then we would be able to incorporate. I think it's one of those places where more ideas are better.
Jennifer?
I'm on the policy subcommittee, and I'm thinking about, we're talking about a policy of the school committee, not a policy of the district. So we have policies of the school committee in the policy manual, right? So that makes sense. I'm also thinking about like policy versus implementation. Like some of these ideas, at least the ideas that I brought up, are more about implementation that wouldn't necessarily be in a policy. Although the policy could be something like that we want to encourage participation from a broad range of, that we want to encourage participation from a broad population, that we want to make information as transparent and open as possible. Like that would be the policy. But then I think it would be up to us to figure out how that actually gets implemented. So I'm just sort of thinking out loud here. I think it does make sense to. But yeah, I would like to maybe have this group to talk about it a little bit more, and then have the policy subcommittee go off and do what they do.
Yeah. Allison?
Yeah, I was just going to say we do have we have policies of the district are policies of the school committee too, and we do have a policy on meetings and public participation in meetings. That's what we had updated, and I think I like the idea of getting a lot of ideas on the table and then letting the policy subcommittee sort through which ones are implementation practice and which ones can be enshrined in policy.
Yeah. All right. Any other input from folks? All right. In keeping with the topic, I will now open up for members of the public to make public comments. If you wish to make a public comment, just go ahead and click the raised hand, or you could use the complicated Control-Alt-H if that worked for you. All right. So we'll move on to future agenda planning. Can we cue that up? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think I can read that. We potentially have a contract, depending if it gets ratified by bargaining unit, to talk about and potentially vote on May 3rd, which is the next meeting of the regional school committee. Given the previous conversation, we'll come back to public comment process and procedures for more ideas. We'll have our third quarter budget update. And I think at that point, we probably, to the conversation that happened during superintendent update, we can open that conversation of where we're sitting at third quarter and, looking ahead to future use. We would like to bring a topic of legal counsel in the district. I don't want to go into more detail yet on that, but I think Dr. Brady and I will be bringing a conversation about legal counsel to the regional school committee. There was going to be a topic of an update on math, the changes a couple years ago at the regional level, just given another two districts math reports that are coming out. Talking to Mary Kiley, we're looking at the May 24th date for that one. So it's in the queue. Just 2 weeks in a row doing two pretty substantial reports. Felt like we would do a better job if it was a little later in the queue. So that's in May. I don't know if there are other topics. I was thinking of what Margaret shared earlier. I don't know if the superintendent evaluation, we need to add that for May 3rd, but it's a long way away. So when your group meets, you can just let us know and we can always add that. Just shoot me and Ben and myself an email and we'll add whatever you need added.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So next up is the warrant report. Do you have any warrants to read, or Irv? Oh, you're muted?
I do, but because of my electronic incapability, I just lost them.
Uh-oh.
So that's okay. We can get that on May 3rd. You'll just have a lengthier list to read. So, bring the water or coffee or tea with you because, at that point you'll have a lot. But since you've already, in our current model, it doesn't hold things up the way it does if you need 5 people to sign off. So, people can still get paid. But if there's any technical support me or Doug could offer before the 3rd, just let us know. We're happy to help.
I was ready.
So I don't see any gifts. This does not look like gifts. None of those are hiding. All right, then I'll accept a motion.
I move to adjourn.
That's quick. I like it. I'm going to second that right away. Moved by Jennifer, seconded by me. We'll take a roll call vote. Unless there's any discussion. You want to talk about this? All right.
There's no discussion allowed on that motion.
We'll go Allison.
Allison, aye.
Margaret.
Margaret, aye.
Jennifer.
Jennifer, aye.
Stephen.
Stephen, aye.
Sarah Bess. Thinking it over a bit.
RSI.
Good to go. I'll take Irv real quick, or
Goodbye.
Allison. So is there something you have to add in, or?
I can wait till the vote's over.
All right.
Yeah. We're going to leave when the vote's over.
I think I got to. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. Ben, I as well. We can wrap up. And then now, Allison.
I just was wondering, a birdie told me last week that this might be Ruby's last meeting. I don't know if that's true.
Oh, it is.
So thank you, Ruby, for joining us all this time. It's been a pleasure to have your voice on our committee. So thank you.
Bravo.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
And I messed up. I should have said this during my chair's update, but we also have another regional member who this would have been their last meeting. I guess the last one was Gene Stamel's last meeting. So.
Oh.
Yep, their town meeting is on the 30th, so we don't have a meeting before then. And in Leverett, they choose their regional rep at their town meeting, or it often plays out where that is the way it happens. I'll put it that way.
Hopefully, they can force him to stay. I like Gene; he's a good guy.
Doug and I can voice that for you.
I like the car.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Ruby. I think collectively, I know the meeting's technically over, but I think we should rightfully thank you for being a student rep during a very, very unusual year. And we wish you the best of luck as you move on from us, and hope you really enjoy the end of your last year here. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
It's special for me because I knew Ruby when she was super little. So this
Regarded.
Yeah. So I think we have to only have students who were Crocker Farm in that time period be the student rep. So, Ruby, you're gonna have to find somebody else because it's been great. But no, really, your contributions and conversations and questions throughout have been really helpful. So thank you so much. And again, wish you the best of luck, Ruby.
Thank you. I don't like accepting compliments. I don't know if you can't tell.
On that note, we'll close the meeting, but congratulations on everything, Ruby, and thank you.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Good night.